some more. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to run through the sponsors and then we'll start the daf. Dr. Paul Koningsberg, in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. In memory of Malka Mann and her family murdered in the Holocaust, Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gidler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gidler Charna bas Yeshaya. Shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva. Marcia Federbush and family in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Karen and Fred Liska, their family and many friends in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edel Bas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell and Irving and Pearl Kaplan. A month of learning by the friends of Bella Silverstein in memory of Bela Bas Yaakov, as well as an honor of those who joined Cheryl Scher's first series of epistemology of Tefillah classes. A week of learning by Judy Heiger in memory of her husband, Aaron ben Shlomo Michael, and starting today, the second, a week of learning by David and Mindel Cheslow in memory of his father, Moshe ben Reuven Mordechai, and by Susan and Ron Podolsky in memory of her father, Simcha Bunim ben Yeshua. I have for Shabbos, a day of learning by plus Torah Fund by Marcia Federbush in memory of her brother, Ari ben Menachem Mendel. Also a day of learning today, plus Shalashudas Fund by Meir and Razi Tauber in memory of his father-in-law, Mordechai ben Meir, as well as today, Shabbos, a day of learning by Lana Haidt in memory of her husband, Chaim Gershon ben Shlomo, as well as Corinne Greenwald, the day of learning in memory of her mother, Miriam Gisa bas Shalom Shachna. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yashir Hashem Mataliyah, and Machol B'nai Yisrael, a good Geben Shtiyar.
Amen.
Amen.
Right. The Gemara today, we're starting Halacha Yud Bet Amud Aleph. Okay. We're dealing with various circumstances that, in essence, occur when a person has been makdish their nechasim. Okay, somebody sets aside all of their possessions, and as part of those possessions, there are items that could be appropriate for the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so as we go into the Gemara, we'll see particularly what's the situation with that. Do you take those items that belong to that individual and indicate that it's consecrated and therefore immediately belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, or there are other situations that has to be applied? Okay. So we're starting, as I said, Yud Bet Amud Aleph Halacha Daled. Matnitin, says the Mishnah, Hamakdish Nechasav, one who's going to set aside or consecrate all his possessions. Vayu behen dvarim ru'yim lekorbanot hatzibor, and among them were items appropriate for communal offerings. Minat nu leumanin bischaran devrei Rabbi Akiva. According to Rabbi Akiva, you can give that items to the artisans who worked for the Beis Hamikdash directly, because their labor is valid enough to deconsecrate items. Amarlo ben Azai. Ben Azai disagrees. Okay? And he is challenging. And he says to Rabbi Akiva, right? Eina hi hamida. That's not the appropriate standard. Ele mafrishin mehen schar ha'umanim, but rather we separate, okay, money from, let's say, borrowing from the shulchanai, from the money changers, and we deconsecrate it onto that money as salary for the artisans. Okay, or we designate money, okay, and we deconsecrate those possessions onto that money directly to the artisans. And then, says Ben Azai, we give that money to them as their wages. The chozrin, then the temple treasurers have to come back. V'lochin ota mitruma chadasha. Then they have to buy it back, okay, from money, shkalim, that are taken from the new shkalim, from the withdrawal in the lishka. Right? Now, Mishnah continues. Hamakdish nechasav. One again now has consecrated his property. V'haya behen behema ru'uya al gabe mizbeach. And he has among this property animals, okay, that are worthy of being put on the altar. Zecharim unekevot, regardless of whether they're male animals for certain offerings or female animals for other offerings. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, what do you do with those animals? If it's a male animal, Zecharim yimachru letzorkei olot, that the male animals should be sold, and then with that money, people can buy other animals for a burnt offering. Unekevot, and if that property that was consecrated included female animals, yimachru letzorchei zivchei shlamim, that should be sold, and with that money, people who need to, okay, can purchase appropriate offerings for shlamim. Ubmehen yiplu im shar nechasav leberek habayit, and the money then goes with the other property for the temple maintenance. Okay? So that's Rabbi Eliezer's view, we said. Rabbi Yoshua is now going to give a different explanation. Says Rabbi Yoshua, Zecharim atzmam yikrevu olot. Let the male animals themselves be offered as burnt offerings. Okay? And what happens? Unekevot yimachru letzorchei sivchei shlamim. Okay, and the female animals will be sold so that those who need to bring a shlamim can purchase, okay, those animals. V'yavid b'dmeihem olot, and bring their money to purchase other burnt offerings, ushar nechasim, and the rest of the property of the person that was makdish, yiplu leberek habayit, that will go then to the temple maintenance. Now, Rabbi Akiva is going to react to the two different explanations and tells us, Ro'eh ani et divrei Rabbi Eliezer, I tend to see, or prefer perhaps, the statements of Rabbi Eliezer, okay, midivrei Rabbi Yoshua, over those of Rabbi Yoshua. Why? Rabbi Eliezer hishveh et midotav. Commentaries say, a couple of possible explanations, that Rabbi Eliezer, because he treated the male and female animal offerings equally. That's one explanation. Another is that the Rabbi Eliezer's approach in terms was better balanced. Okay? The Rabbi Yeshua chalak, but Rabbi Yeshua basically divided them up. Okay, he split them up. Okay? Now, Amar Rav Papias. So Rav Papias, however, a younger colleague, is going to tell us, Shamati et divrei shenehen. I heard, he said, the explanations of both of them. Hamakdish beferish. Okay? And it may depend on if the person who was doing the consecrating of his property spelled out explicitly how he was going to want that property utilized. Kidivrei Rabbi Eliezer. Then that would follow the view of Rabbi Eliezer. V'hamakdish stam. But if the consecrator simply gave over his property with no explicit clarification, Kedivrei Rabbi Yoshua, then it would be more according to the view of Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, now our Mishnah continues. Hamakdish menechasav, vayu behen dvarim ru'ayim legabe mizbeach. Now we're saying that he consecrated from his property items that were worthy for the altar. For example, yenot, wines, shmanim, oils, ofot, birds. Okay? Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, yimachru letzorchei oto hamin, that it should be sold for those who need the items of a similar variety, of a similar kind. V'yavi b'damehen olot. And then one can bring with that money burnt offerings. V'shar nechasim yiplu leberek habayit. And the rest of the possessions would fall under the category of temple maintenance. Now, our Gemara picks up.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Well, the Mishnah says olot, you keep translating it as birds.
As what?
Birds.
Herds?
You say birds instead of olot.
No. Olot are burnt offerings.
Oh, olot are bird offerings. Okay.
Right. Okay. Now, why specifically burnt offerings? I'm going to suggest because that was what was done as the kayetz to the Mizbeach. Remember we learned yesterday that at times you wanted to keep the Mizbeach busy, and therefore when there were people not bringing specific items, okay, you had these extra offerings that were kayetz, we said that was replete, fulfilling dessert, according to some, okay, for the Mizbeach. Okay.
Those are only birds.
Well, it could be birds, doesn't have to be. Okay. So let's see what happens with the Gemara now. Okay. It wants to come back and tell us, Hamakdish v'chule, l'korbanot tzibor. Okay, the person consecrated his possessions, items for communal offerings, right? Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Rabbi Yochanan suggests, what example could we have with this? Ketoret, right? The example of incense, right? Which could have been included in the property of the makdish, of the person consecrating. If that's the case, now we understand the comment from Rav Hoshea, Amar Rabbi Hoshea, Tipater ba'omen mishel beit avtinus. If that's the case, then you have to explain it that the person who was consecrating the property, his properties, was an artisan from the estate, from the house of Avtinus, Shahayano tel b'scharo ketoret, that he used to receive incense as part of his wages. Okay? Ma ta'ama, the Ben Azai. So the Gemara now asks, so what's the reasoning of Ben Azai that he challenged Rabbi Akiva here? She'ein ha'hekdesh mitchalel al hamalacha ela al hama'ot. Namely, that one cannot deconsecrate the coins on labor, but only on something tangible, namely like the money that had been paid to the artisans. Tman Tanina, and elsewhere we're taught, says the Gemara, B'kadshe bedek habayit, with an example of those items, right, that were consecrated for temple upkeep. Shestam hekdeshot b'bedek habayit, that general, unspecified, right, consecrations went to the temple maintenance. Hekdesh bedek habayit, for the temple maintenance. Chal al hakol, okay, that could basically include all sorts of things. U'ma'alin b'giduleihin, and we have therefore a statement that tells us that any misuse of consecrated bedek habayit items can be considered misuse if it's a derivative of that item. Ve'ein behem haniyah lekohanim, and therefore even the kohanim cannot benefit from it. So what happens, says the Gemara? Amar Rabbi Chananya, he says, the Rabbi Lezer he, that must be the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay? Why? The Tanina, because we learn elsewhere the following: Hamakdish nechasav va'ita behen behema ru'uya al gav mizbeach, one who consecrates his possessions, and among them is an animal worthy of the altar, zcharim u'nekevot, whether it's male or female. Rabbi Lezer Omer, he says, zacharim yimachru letzorchei olot, that the male animals should be sold, and people then who need can use that money to buy burnt offerings. Unekevot yimachru letzorchei zivchei shlamim, and the female animals from the consecrated property should be sold for those who are in need of buying items for shlamim offerings. Udmehem yiplu im shar nechasim lebedek habayit, and their monies then, okay, left will be used for properties associated with the temple maintenance. Now, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Tama the Rabbi Lezer, the reasoning behind Rabbi Lezer's approach is the following pasuk: Ve'ish ki yakdish et beito kodesh lashem. One who sanctifies, right, his home, okay, can do so, right? B'me anan kayamin. On what basis do we maintain this? Im bebait dira kfar kativ. If we were talking about his actual living residence, okay, we already have a pasuk that tells us ve'im hamakdish yigael et beito, that the person who consecrates his home can redeem it back. Ela ki anan kaimin b'makdish nechasav. Therefore, we must interpret that pasuk as one consecrating his possessions. Mikan shestam hekdeshot lebedek habayit. From here is where we learn then that an unspecified consecration goes to the temple maintenance. Now, Amar Rabbi Zera, says Rabbi Zera, in the name of Rav Huna, B'Shem Rav, in the name of Rav, B'met pligim. So what then are they arguing about? B'makdish nechasav, when one consecrates his possessions. Ava b'makdish edro, but when one consecrates his herd, kol ama mode shahulam mizbeach. Everyone agrees that then those animals are ideally dedicated to the temple, to the altar. Now, Rabbi Ba, it says, Rav Huna, in the name of Rav Huna, B'Shem Rav, in the name of Rav. Ma pligin, so what are they arguing about? B'Makdish Edro, when he consecrates his herd of animals. Ava b'Makdish Nechasav, but if he consecrates his possessions in general, Ko Ama Modea Shahu Lebedek Habayit, that everyone agrees that it goes towards the temple maintenance. Now, let's go on. As the Gemara tells us, Al Date de Rabbi Zera, according to the view of Rabbi Zera, Necha, then that statement seems fine. That's satisfactory. Okay. Vakasha al de Rebbe Ba, but it's problematic for the answer of Rebbe Ba, okay, who said that Rebbe Eliezer and Rebbe Yeshua only argue about the Makdish Edro, consecrating the animals. Behema lo lemizbeachi, okay, because isn't an animal normally thought to be fit for the altar? Isn't that the case? Behema lemizbeachi. Indeed, an animal is generally thought to be fit for the mizbeach, unless, of course, it has a mum, right? V'lama satam ha'ish hazeh. So why did the person just say it in general without specifying? Shahu ka'omer lo yiyeh ela lebedek habayit, where he could have simply said it goes for the maintenance of the temple. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Amar lo shniyahi. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there's really no difference here. Right? Hamakdish nechasav, he hamakdish edro. That consecrating one's possessions is almost exactly similar to consecrating one's flock. Okay? And that basically, he hamachloket. And that's basically their real argument, whether they're one and the same or whether they're two different kinds of consecration. Okay? Let's go on. We'll skip what's in parentheses and continue. Rav Huna b'shem Rav Rabbi Abahu. Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, says in the name of Rabbi Abahu. Okay, what's that? He says as follows, right? Okay, again, b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Once more, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kadshe bedek habayit shepod an tmimin. Let's say we have a situation, okay, where animals were set aside for temple maintenance, okay, and what happens? Okay, they were redeemed in a status when they were still unblemished. Okay, tell me, right? Yatz'u lechulin, they should become unconsecrated. Okay, matnitin. However, we have a Mishnah that tells us the following: Amrachen, that the following was said, right? Vladan, the chalvan, okay, the offspring and the milk of animals. Motar, okay, anything that is left over, okay, is permitted, all right? La'achar pidyonam, after their redemption, okay, which would seem to imply, again, that supports the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, okay, that they go to chulin. right? However, on the top of Yud Bet, as we continue, Rav Chizkiah b'shem Rav Chisda says as follows: Tipater. This is how you should interpret it. Shepad'an tmimin v'humamu. That when they were redeemed, they were unblemished, and then they became blemished. And that's why they could be, their progeny or their milk could be used. Okay? Because so long as that they were still tamim, unblemished, they should still be ra'ui lemizbeach, right? Fit for the altar. Now, Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rav Chisda says as follows: Matnitin amrachem. In fact, our Mishnah seems to say that, because it says, Vladan v'chalvan asur la'achar pidyonein, that their progeny and their milk is forbidden after they're redeemed. So what's the issue here? Rabbi Chizkiah b'shem Rabbi Yossi says as follows: Kadshe bedek habayit. How do we clarify it? Okay, those items that were consecrated for the temple maintenance, shepad tmimim, and they were redeemed when they were unblemished. Yatz'u lechalim. Okay, we say that they become unconsecrated. Now, ein tema. Okay, and in regard to what? Right? Lo yatz'u lechulin. Okay, do we say that they don't go out as unconsecrated? He'ach kadshei mizbeach chalin el kadshei bedek habayit. How is it possible that we could say that something that was consecrated for the altar, okay, takes precedent over something that was consecrated for temple maintenance? Okay, and how say then that it becomes totally unconsecrated? Balei mumin, says the Mishnah, right? If it has a mum, kadshei mizbeach chala aleihen. Rida mila. Okay, so here we're saying as follows. Okay, that if it belonged, how is it possible? Okay, we're saying that the sanctity of the altar can take effect on them. Okay, if they are part of the temple upkeep, temple maintenance. Ba'alei mumin, we're saying that it must mean that these animals had become blemished. Okay, when did they become blemished? Before they became chulin. Kadshei mizbeach chala aleihen. Then we say that there is still some smattering of altar sanctity upon them. Okay, and if that's the case, laidei mila. Okay, in regards to what? Lagiza ula avoda. We're saying that even though they became amum, okay, they still had some level of sanctity prohibiting us from sharing them or working them. That's the case. Now, our new piece in the Mishnah. I'm sorry, a new piece in the Gemara. Hifrish nekeva la'olato, ula pischo, ula ashamo. Okay. Someone had consecrated a female animal for a burnt offering, or for its Passover offering, or for an asham offering, right? What happens? Oset mura. Okay. They must make an exchange animal. Let's call it that. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Omer, according to Rabbi Shimon, okay, la'olato oset mura. For the burnt offering, he can make an exchange. L'pischo ula ashamo eino oset mura. But for his Passover or Hasham, guilt offering, he cannot make an exchange. Now, what happens? There's a response. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, the Amora, says in the name of Rabbi Shimon, a Tana, La'olato ulapischo ula'ashamo eino set mura. No, that for the burnt offering or the Passover offering of the Asham offering, right? He cannot make any tmura whatsoever, any exchange whatsoever. Okay? Right? Now, so this could be even if the animal has a blemish. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan the Rita'ama, the Rabbi Shimon, Shekain Matzinu, Nekeva Ba'of, Kshera Lavo Ola. We see that says Rabbi Yochanan, that the rationale of Rabbi Shimon, the Tana, was that we do find examples of a female bird offering being valid as a total burnt offering. Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan, and further Rabbi Yochanan said, Tama the Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, imin b'mino, hu chaluk alav, okay, if we're talking about, okay, a situation, right, that the animal if the unfit animal is of the same variety as the fit animal, okay, and it's separate, distinct from the fit animal, okay, what's the situation? Okay, in that case, it kshera lavo ola, it would seem to be appropriate, right, to go as a burnt offering, right? Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan, Tama the Rabbi Shimon, right? We said, if that's the case, okay, kol shekain min b'she'eino mino. How much more so, okay, if it's an unfit animal of a different variety. So the Gemara wants to clarify. Ezehu min b'mino shahu chaluk alav. Okay, what kind of a situation do you have, right? Okay, where an unfit animal, okay, of the same kind is distinct from a fit animal. Kehada, like the following Datani that was taught in a Mishnah. Okay, Asham ben Shana. You have a Asham offering within the first year. Vehevi ben Shtayim. Okay, but the person brought a 2-year-old animal. Okay, in that case, it's the same animal, but it's not fit, right? Yatsa ben Shtayim, Vehevi ben Shalosh. Okay, or bringing a 2-year animal, supposed to bring a 2-year animal, and brought a 3-year animal. Lo Yatsa. Then that did not satisfy the requirement. Okay. So let's skip the parentheses and go on. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, both Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yoshua. Shnehem Amru, the two of them both said as follows. Devar Echad, the very same thing. Namely, Kama de Rabbi Yoshua, Amar Nekeva le'ola, Lo Kitcha, Ela Hekdesh Damim. Hekdesh Damim. Okay, that a female animal sanctified as a Ola, okay, because the Ola is supposed to be a male animal, okay, so what happens? That female animal only has a level of monetary sanctity, That's the situation. V'chein Rabbi Shimon Amar, nekeva le'olah, lo kidsha ela hekdesh damim. And likewise, Rabbi Shimon said, okay, that a female animal used for a burnt offering only attains a level of sanctity of monetary sanctity. Okay, so the Gemara then says, Ein tema. Okay, so again, we have that phrase, if you say, okay, the following, right? What is it? Okay, just a second. Kadsha Kedusha Haguf Yeru. But we could, right? Don't you say then that Rabbi Yeshua could say that female animal that was going to be used as an olah, it has some physical sanctity as well. Okay, and therefore, since it has some physical sanctity, not just monetary sanctity, it has to, if it's for it no longer to be worthy of the Mizbeach, it has to be put out to pasture and then get a blemish and then can be used. Amar Rebbe. So Rebbe responds and says as follows. Ani ro'eh et divrei Rebbe Shimon b'Pesach. He says, I see the words of Rebbe Shimon regarding a Passover offering, okay? Shehamutar b'Pesach b'Shlamim. Why? Because we know that any surplus Pesach offering becomes designated as shlamim, okay? Because it's a female animal and it's brought then also as shlamim, as a female animal. Velema, okay? But we should also indicate that Rebbe said, Ein ani ro'eh divrei Rebbe Shimon ba'asham. But I don't see the view of Rebbe Shimon regarding a asham offering. Shehamutar asham ba'olah. Okay, because instead he says that that in that case, right, the leftover asham, a surplus asham, should become an olah offering. Right? Okay. So, given that situation, we have the following new statement, an answer by the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Avin, he says, Im hikdish Pesach bashlamim. If one consecrated an animal as a Pesach offering, we see it can become a shlamim. Gufo karev shlamim. That its physical sanctity, okay, can be similar to that of shlamim. Im hikdish asham. If one consecrated an offering as an asham, ba'olah, it must come then, if left over, as an olah, as a burnt offering, ein gufo korev olah. But itself, it's not offered as an olah. Mahu kadun. So then what's the argument? What is they disagreeing about? Hahin amar hekdesh damim hekdish. One of them is saying, okay, that it becomes consecrated on a level of monetary sanctity. V'hayin amar hekdesh gufo hekdish. And the other is arguing that it becomes consecrated on a physical level as well. Okay. Now, having said that this could be their argument, we're going to continue, all right, a little bit more and see what the result is. Rabbi Zera b'Shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish suggests as follows. Ta'amad the Rabbi Yoshua. The reason of Rabbi Yoshua is based on a pasuk. Daber al Aharon ve'al banav ve'al kol b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem ish mi beit Yisrael v'gomer asher yakriv l'Hashem le'olah. Okay, clearly, right, telling us hakol karev le'olah, implying that all consecrated items, okay, that are left over should be brought back to the Mizbeach in the status of an olah. Lertzonchem tamim. Okay, namely, what the Pasuk says, furthermore, that it's favorable, that it's going to be unblemished. Okay, that's the case. Zachar, minayin. Okay, if that's the case for a male animal, how do we know minayin afilu l'nekevot, that that's true for female animals? Talmud Loma says another pasuk, baboker lerabot et nekevot. In the morning, he says to include the female animals as well. Okay, all right. So Rabbi Yitzchak be Rabbi Eliezer Sha'al asked the following: Kativ Zachar, but it's written male. V'at amart baboker, and then you say in the morning the rabot tanekevot, to include the females. Okay, udechavta, and explicitly written tamim, that it's unblemished. V'at amart baboker, but then you say in the morning the rabot ba'alei mumin, and that comes to include animals that are blemished. Ma beinehun, what's the difference between them? Rav Amar Shifta Dechad Kada Beinehim. Rav said it's the difference between them is like a weaver's rod. Okay, there's a marked difference between them, right? Rabbi Eliezer Omer, okay, and that was the point. So to finish up, Rabbi Eliezer says as follows. Okay, he said it should be sold from the same variety. Okay, the same case. Rabbi Abahu b'shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Tama the Rabbi Eliezer, the reasoning of Rabbi Eliezer is as follows. Right? Okay. Daber el Aharon v'el banav v'gomer. Asher yakrivu lo Shem le'olah. That pasuk. Hakol karev olah. That again tells us that everything is to be offered as a olah. Right? Lertzonchem tamim zachar. Okay, following the pasuk. Yachol afilu ofot. That tells us that even a male bird could be offered as well, not just female birds. Talmud Lomar baboker. Therefore, we have a phrase, another pasuk that says in the morning, v'lo ofot, and that excludes the birds. Rabbi Yirmiyah v'Rabbi Bun bar Haya havin yativun v'amrin taman. Okay, these two sages were sitting and they were learning that section, right? Learning what was taught there. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Tama the Rabbi Shimon, Shekain mikvel ba'of kshera lavo olah v'ka amar hachin. Okay, that basically he said that those animals would be acceptable. Okay, and if that's the case, if you could use the birds as an olah, okay, whether it's male or female, okay, therefore it's similar. The same thing should be applicable in other cases as well. And we're going to stop right there. And tomorrow, I hope everybody is able to pick up and continue to on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Okay. All right. Okay. Everybody have a good Shabbos and a good Yom Tov.
Yeah, good Shabbos.
Everyone have a good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Okay.